It's time for today's travel and cruise industry news. With the latest from travel and cruises around the world, here's your host, Chillie Falls.
Hey, good morning and welcome to Thursday Travel and Cruise Industry News Podcast. On this, what is today? The 18th day of January, 2024, coming to you from Central Virginia, Bedford County, right outside Lynchburg. Hot day again today. It's going to get a little cooler tonight, though. It's going down in the 60s tonight. But it's supposed to be up pushing 90 today. We're not going to be up around that 103. That was full. And I did find out, folks, that my breathing doesn't do well in that hot of air. So I really struggled for a couple days there. But anyway, that's okay. All right, so we do have several things this morning on the agenda. Obviously, I announced that we do have a special guest this morning. I'll get to that in a second. After that's part of the show is over, then I do have a little bit of news. We got a family that got left behind in Alaska. Cruise lines may boycott Spanish ports. Norwegian to sail from Philadelphia. NCL's Alaska deployment for 2026 was announced. And Ovation of the Seas is moving to the West Coast. And lots more here at 11 o'clock this morning. Today is National Tropical Fruit Day. I'm all in favor of that, folks. I over the past year, this past year, I've always eaten a little bit of fruit. But I have really become a fruit eater now. I eat a lot of fruit. We can't get good tropical fruit here all the time. I'll save that for my cruises. But, we a lot of things. Like if I'm sitting watching TV at night, my snack is a big handful of grapes. I don't eat chips and junk at all anymore. So, I enjoy the fruit. So it's National Tropical Fruit Day. So make sure you eat some fruit today, folks. If you're listening by the podcast, you're always welcome here. You can access the podcast via my blog, which is accessadventure.net, or wherever you get your podcast from. Just search for Travel and Cruise Industry News, and up pops the Fat Travel Guy. Two quick announcements before we get to our guest this morning. One, I do have Albie visiting again today. So if you hear a dog bark or some rustling or some slapping, lapping of water or crunching of food or the door to the cave getting opened when Amanda gets home to take Albie for a walk, you could hear anything in the background, so you'll know what that is. Also, there has been some development on my major announcement that I was hoping to make sometime this week. It's not going exactly the way I wanted it to go, but that's okay. We're going to kind of back in to do basically the same thing. I got to work out some details on it yet, but there's still going to be a really good announcement for me, for the channel, and for all of you guys watching or listening via the podcast even. All right, so I guess I'm our guest now for, 5-6 years, something like that. She's been on the show numerous times. She's been on all of the previous things about the show, back to when it was when I was doing cruising for solo stuff. When we did the Cruise Amigos during the pandemic. And then once we changed, now kind of, we closed down the Cruise Amigos. Excuse me, I did some stuff on my own and then started the podcast now a couple years now that we've been doing not only the live show, we've been on the live show for about 10 years, but the podcast started, and it's, like I've said before, that is way bigger part of my numbers. And by the way, folks, we started yesterday going live on Instagram as well. little different setup, but it will, the show will be on Instagram within about an hour after the end of the show, which is a good thing. But anyway, back to my guest. She's been on the show a bunch of times. I call her a travel writer. She's actually a travel journalist. She does so much cool stuff. She's become a really good friend and somebody that I totally enjoy. She always brings her A game. We get lots of wonderful content from her. Plus, it's a lot of fun. So with no further ado, here's my special guest for the day, Jeannine Williamson. Welcome back to the Travel and Cruise News podcast.
Thank you so much, Chillie, and what a fantastic introduction. And so thrilled to hear how your numbers have gone up and everything's good. So it's great to be back. And obviously for me, I don't know what you've got in your hand, but it's tea time here. So I've got
it's cheers.
A British
there it is. Cheers.
A cuppa to hand. But yeah, great to be back. Well, thank you for your introduction. I know, lots been going on, and I think we're here today to talk about a couple of big adventures, both on the personal front and work front. So fire away.
Okay, so how to start with this? Last weekend, now you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong, but you participated in a 100-kilometer race. I mean, I have a hard time with kilometers. The way I translate that, that's 62 miles. Are you out of your mind?
Well, I think we've known that actually for quite a long time, but
that's true.
I don't know how much you know about it, but a couple of years ago, there we go, there's the medal, Race to the Stone. So it's an ultra marathon, and essentially an ultra marathon is anything that's over the standard marathon distance of 26 miles. A couple of years ago, I did London with some wonderful travel industry colleagues for a travel industry charity. And this year, in fact, the same lovely lady, Lucia Rowe, who's the UK managing director for Arosa River Cruises. She's charming, but also very gently persuasive. And she twisted my arm and others to take part in Race for the Stones, which is really the UK's biggest ultra marathon. It's over 2 days. It's held in a beautiful part of the country, in the West Country. And so 50 kilometres each day. You can do one day, the second day, or both days to do the whole thing. And it was really, really tough. But we managed it, all the things we set out to do. So far, we've raised over £16,000 now for a charity called Reuben's Retreat in the UK, but a fabulous charity. Essentially, they look after families that have been bereaved and families with children struggling with very serious health issues. So on a serious note, we're still raising money. If anybody wants to help us, we take any currencies, so you can look it up. But on a fun note, it was a brilliant group. We had a lot of laughs along the way to help with it all. We actually had a debrief yesterday afternoon, which was hilarious. All the different stories coming out, all the sort of behind the scenes tales, which I can or can't tell you about, depending what you want to hear.
All right, so there was a nice article about you beforehand as you prepare for your toughest challenge. Now, these people must have thought I was going to be there because they had a chair that's built just for my fat butt, and there you are in my chair. Is that chair made for me?
Well, no, possibly. I think made for me after we probably all shrunk a bit after we'd done all the mileage. But it's great, isn't it? Yeah, that was when we were sort of recovering at the end of it. Yeah, coming out. That was at the start, not knowing what lay ahead. But and there's the lovely Lucia. We blame it all on her.
All right, now you're out running through the countryside across what the hell is that's not a wheat field. What kind of field is that?
Yes, it is. I mean, this is it's a beautiful part of the country in the west of England, through Wiltshire and part of Oxfordshire. the name comes Race to the Stones. It's because you end up the Avery Circle. Can't get my teeth in now. Avery Circle, which is almost a smaller version of Stonehenge, around 5,000 years old, very prehistoric monument. So that's where the race gets its name. But it is through beautiful countryside. I mean, very different countryside from where I live down in Sussex, but nevertheless beautiful. All sorts of terrains, from hills, flat parts and villages. Lots of fantastic crowd support along the way. So, as I say, it was just such a lovely team. We're all recovering this week. That was where we camped on the first night. A beautiful view.
So they give you a tent to sleep in. So you do roughly half of this, and I'm sure there were some adult beverages involved before you go back and do a second day of that. Is that correct?
I did wonder, actually, how many minutes are we in before the adult beverage word comes up? So they had camping on the first night. In fact, I will put up my hands. I decided to have a bit of comfort and went for a glamping option, which was somewhat more comfortable. Yes, you could take your own adult beverages. For some reason, the licensed bar didn't happen. But to be fair, when you're doing these things, it's not really wise to have a drink, but needless to say, quite a few adult beverages were consumed on Sunday night.
Now, in 2 days, you did this 62 miles for us poor damn dumb Americans that don't understand kilometers since we've been in grade school. Oh my goodness, Brett the cat's picture is crooked. I just noticed that. I gotta fix Brett the cat. Sorry, that little side thing there. Okay, so now in these 2 days, you're out there in the wilderness, out in Western England, and this is all they fed you, like chips and sweet potato falafel and.
No, I mean, you say that's all they fed us. For me, this is the first cross-country one I've ever done, and it was completely different for any of your viewers that might have done a 10K or a road marathon, where everybody's just drinking and having these horrible sugary gels. I mean, here they have these amazing food stations. So I was just astonished to find little crisps, little chips for you, cookies, all manner of things. And there were 3 pit stops, as they said, along the way. And of course, the temptation was to loiter there, but really you had to get a move on. So,
all right. So now I'm curious, what the world is sweet potato falafel?
I mean, you have sweet potatoes. I mean, what is it? I mean, it's a Middle Eastern. It's lovely, a sort of fried ball with salad. You have them and dips. Have you never had them? Yeah.
I just never had it with sweet potatoes, so I'm just.
A nice.
Of course, I try never to eat healthy, never. So, let's see what else. Oh yeah, so they leave these tents up for Christmas, and they got Christmas lights in them. Is that what
This was a big selling point for the glamping, the fairy lights. I just saw the fact that it had fairy lights. I thought, okay, I'm going to book that.
All right, so they had to have generators out there for that too.
Yeah. I mean, it was having, as I say, never done it before, only heard about it. Lucia's done it. This was her 3rd time. But the logistics and the organisation was incredible. Lots of people come from abroad. So if any of your viewers have the urge to do it, come and join us next year. But yeah, they had the camping site on a very large farm. Showers, hot showers, hair dryers, food trucks.
Nice. Yeah. Now, is there any truth to the fact that about halfway through the second day, you grabbed a horse and rode it in?
Well, I mean, you know me and horses. I spotted these 2 actually at the first pit stop, and along the way, because there are quite a lot of horse racing stables down in the Wiltshire part of the world, and part of the course was alongside some of the gallops. And I was sort of half hoping that maybe a string of horses might come by and I could thumb a lift, but they didn't. So.
And this is to prove you made it to the end.
End of the first day.
Oh, that's just the first day. Okay. But you did make it to the end on the end of the second day.
So, yeah.
And this was a screenshot from this morning's Travel Weekly where your team raised 16,000 euros for Reuben's retreat 100-kilometer events. I can't get over that. So,
well, thank you. But, it was tough, but we had, such a lot of fun along the way. We've made a lot of the team I knew already, but others we really have become bonded for life now with all the various stories and the capers that went on. And some of them are still recovering. As I say, there are some, you have to have some humor out of all of this. And one of the guys, his feet were really, really, really bad. And there's a nice travel industry event that's taking place tonight, actually at the Houses of Parliament. It's being hosted there. And he's going to have to wear sliders because he can't fit his feet into normal shoes. So he's probably going to be the only person at this very smart event with these shoes on, but he'll have a tale to tell, and he's earned his bragging rights. So.
How did your feet survive?
Just one blister, actually, quite lucky.
Wow. Back in the day when I used to run, and that's been close to 100 years ago now. The longest I did was 10K. I can't fathom doing a marathon, and God knows I can't fathom doing 62 miles. That's just, my mind doesn't work that way.
But again, 5K, 10K is an achievement, and you just build on that, and it's the usual thing. It's training, preparation, like most things in life. Preparation is sort of everything, and then hope for the best on the day.
Now, we've talked numerous times about your travels and your work, technically, because you go on all these amazing trips on amazing ships all around the world, and then you write about it, and you photograph it, and you do all sorts of things. Now, you were on a trip recently. Is there any truth to the fact that you walked into your room one night and this was in your bed?
Well, it made a change from a towel animal, didn't it?
To a kimono dragon. Tell us about it.
So there you are. Well, thankfully, not in my cabin, because actually probably one wouldn't fit into a cabin because they can be over 10 feet long. They're the world's largest lizard, and the deadliest lizard. But so this really was the big trip of this year, with Sea Trek sailing adventures to Indonesia, and there we are, to these amazing volcanic islands all around the Komodo National Park, and the name is a clue. This is the only part of the world where you will find these incredible lizards, or dragons as they're called, living in the wild, and they really are the most extraordinary creatures. I know some people said, they make my skin crawl. I
find them fascinating. Yeah. I do lots of zoo shows, okay. And I'm just always fascinated with kimonos.
So we had the day before we went to the park. Every night, like a lot of ships, there was a briefing, and really, really good naturalist guides were telling us all about them. And again, I've seen them, as you probably have, but didn't know that much about them. So apparently that they have very, very toxic and poisonous saliva, and with their tongues. And interesting, it's only when they're walking along that their tongues are flicking in and out, because their tongues also help them sense prey. They can somehow smell their prey, and then
through their tongue.
Then they will stun the prey, and with this toxic saliva, and they had a fairly slow and not very pleasant death. The good news was we were told that no Sea Trek passengers had ever been lost to the dragons, and even better news was that apparently they, unlike us, they only eat once or twice a month. So we hoped that our visit the next day, was a couple of days after they'd had that month's meal, and I think it must have been, because they seemed very placid and just incredible to see close up.
I know. Is this the cabin on your ship?
Yes, isn't it wonderful? It's like
wow, is that gorgeous?
It was a wonderful. I loved it because for me it had a slightly pirate feel about it. So it's a traditional Indonesian style of ship. Now, I'm probably going to say this wrong for any Indonesian people that, but they're called pinisa sailing vessels. They're made out of ironwood, and that itself is very interesting. Because later in the week, I think you may have some pictures. We went to see one being constructed. So this is a very, very, very hard wood. Oh, there's the outside of the ship. Isn't she beautiful?
I would so want to be on one of those one day.
Yeah. So Umbak Putih, which means white sail in Indonesian. So that was the cabin in that. And she was originally built, I believe, back in the 50s as a cargo ship, and then converted for 28 passengers. A lovely mixed crowd of shipmates on board. Quite a few from your side of the pond, because the company is actually co-owned by an American couple who divide their time between the US and Bali, Frank and Jenny. And so we were privileged to have them on board. Here I am in a canoe with a lovely friend that I went with, because this was one of the ways we went exploring. It was actually a trip divided into two elements, because there's a new add-on where you can go to Borneo to see the orangutans. So this picture was taken in Borneo, and then we were out at sea around the national park. Okay, so this was when we had a little stopover in Bali, and we were very lucky. We went to learn, well, in my case, have a go at, in my friend's case, succeed very well at Balinese wood carving, which is a traditional craft over there. You think, oh, maybe that looks sort of easy if maybe you've done a bit of wood carving with a on a bench and everything. But the key here is that the traditional way to do it is you have to hold the piece of wood with your foot and then try and chisel it out and sit on the floor cross-legged, which of course doesn't come as easily to us when we're used to sitting on chairs.
I thought I had loaded a picture of you actually doing that, but I don't see it now. So the machine might have eaten it. Well, and maybe it's just out of order, because I'm not sure what kind of order.
So here we're jumping back. This is the lovely ship in the background, and the sea, which of course was gloriously warm. There's a lot of snorkeling involved in this trip, and it's just conditions
with sharks.
With sharks, with whale sharks.
Yeah, this is you snorkeling with a damn shark that's bigger than you are.
This is one of the people on the trip. I was nearby. Again, another amazing experience. This trip is all about, they call it, seeing the Magnificent Seven in Indonesia. One of them being obviously the Komodo dragons, another is the orangutans, third being the whale sharks. They are the biggest sharks you can have, about 40 feet long. But
wow,
the good news is they feed completely differently from others, so no real teeth. They ingest lots of water, and that's how they eat. So we were in no danger of becoming, a bit like Jonah and the whale, being swallowed alive and coming out later on.
And this is coral restoration.
Okay, so that's another part of the trip. Another, the big seven, as they call them, is coral. I mean, for any snorkel fans amongst your viewers, this is an amazing part of the world to go snorkeling in. I mean, the underwater was absolutely incredible. Turtles, fish, the most vibrant corals, and you literally just have to dip your head in the water to see them. So even if you're not a particularly good snorkeler, and I'll put my hands up, I'm not the best, but they were really supportive in helping with tuition and everything. And I really got my confidence up. And to be honest, what you saw just took your mind off how do I breathe, this, that, and the other. But this is a really cool thing they do. It's a very ethical and sustainable cruise line. So one of the things they've become involved with is a coral restoration project. And this is off one of the islands where a lot of the coral have died off, because they do dynamite fishing, where they're blasting fish out of the water, either stunning them or killing them with dynamite, which of course then kills the coral. So we spent a morning planting these little tiny pieces of coral onto these little steel frames, which you then take out and put in the seabeds to grow. So that's a really nice thing to think you're actually leaving somewhere and you've made an impact.
And look what I did find.
Oh,
That's Jeannine working with her feet.
so I mean, when you look at this, this is like, the childhood thing of, patting your head and rubbing your stomach. Yeah.
Couldn't you see my big fat butt trying to do that? Hell, I can't get my hands anywhere near my feet.
But it was a lovely, lovely thing to do, and we had the most delightful teacher. This was at his beautiful, beautiful house, and he showed us how to do it. So my effort, as I say, was nothing to write home about, something that only its mother would love, but it's home. I've got it here. I'm not going to put it on the wall, but it's a lovely memento.
I know you may not even have thought about this, and I'm totally curious. Is that ship at all wheelchair accessible? I wouldn't think it is.
No, unfortunately, Chillie, this is one of the ones where you do have to have a pretty good degree of mobility to go on it. Otherwise, there's tenders to the shore. Obviously, you don't have to go snorkeling, but there's steps to get down. There's a lot of transfers, and obviously the ship itself just has fairly steep stairs. So sadly, this isn't one for you. But for,
I understand.
For
that happens.
It swings and roundabouts, as we know. Some things just aren't doable.
I get all kinds of messages, and this little dude, I understand that he whistled over to his buddy and he said, "Hey, dude, see all those damn dumb tourists? Let's go steal their bananas." And sure enough, he went over and stole y'all's bananas. Is there any truth to that one?
I mean, aren't they absolutely fantastic? I mean, these are the Bornean orangutans, which are the biggest of the three orangutan species. When I went, with Anthony, my friend that I went with, we thought maybe we would be lucky to see 2 or 3. On the first day, we saw, I think, 19 in total. We counted. So it was I mean, for anybody that's interested in, to me, this was an absolute bucket list adventure. And the orangutan park is a new add-on to one of the Sea Trek itineraries, which is a river cruise element, which is done in conjunction, in partnership with a company called Wow Borneo. And they really pioneered river cruises along these very remote, parts of the rivers in Borneo. And this we saw and were introduced to the work of, it's called BOSS, the Borneo Orangutan Survival Trust, which is sort of like the biggest trust that cares for orangutans that have either been the illegal pet trade, or their mothers were killed and they were taken by poachers. I mean, it's very, very moving, but also very, very heartwarming. So these guys, we saw them in different stages. So if you're really, really lucky, and people do, you will see the orangutans that have been born in the wild and lived in the wild all their lives. Yeah. These guys have been rescued and looked after for various reasons by the charity and trust. And what happens, first of all, they're sort of really taught how to be orangutans again, how to hunt, how to build nests, how to survive in the wild. And on one island where people actually don't go on it, but after they leave the first part of the sanctuary, they go onto these islands, and food is put down once a day, not enough for them to live on, but enough for them to have some food. Then they learn to hunt. When they see they can hunt fully, they're then taken to another island where they have to live by themselves. And then after several years, if that all works out, then they are released back into the wild, which is fantastic. Yeah. But what, I mean, there were so many elements of the trip, but I am a mad animal person, and to see the amazing creatures, just phenomenal.
There we go. Tina Turtle back there.
Okay.
A painting of her, but Tina Turtle was a turtle that went through rehab and was released back to the wild. So I'm a big fan on that. Albie's moving around a little bit now,
But,
so we might hear a little more.
but the first one, sorry, I was just going to say, jumping back, the first one, with his hands, I think it's 97% of, human DNA. We share the same DNA, and you can really, really see it. It was a really hot day. This guy, he was just chilling out in the water, arms on the log. His eyes were flicking back and forth when he saw us. Wasn't at all, but I could have watched them all day. Absolutely fascinating. And they're huge. You can see that with with the one with the bananas. That was just, because to me it looked like he's carrying a posy of flowers.
And that's gotta be a bunch of about 24 bananas. That's a huge bananas.
And look at the weight that he's creating, just walking through the river water.
Yeah, even as big as I am, I wouldn't want him to sit on me. All right, so now it does seem that you've picked up a really bad habit from this trip. It appears that you're now going to turn into a motorcycle mama. Is that true?
Well, I never know. Everybody knows this show is totally unrehearsed. But when Chillie says that, I sit with trepidation thinking, what photo is he going to produce now? So, okay, this one's great. So believe it or not, I have never, ever, ever been on a motorcycle. And one of the trips on one of the islands was to go to a beautiful waterfall. Far too far to walk and far too hot anyway, and have a dip in this waterfall. And then they announced, oh, we're going there on motorcycles. So, okay, and so I actually fessed up and said, look, I've never been on a motorcycle. I'm actually quite nervous. And they were so lovely, because the guys with the motorbikes, again, it's great because they involve local people in this. These were all local villagers, fishermen, who arrived on their motorbikes to take us to the waterfall. So they found me, the biggest guy with the sturdiest motorbike, told him to go carefully, and off I went. And on the way up, I will confess that I had my eyes closed a little bit of the time, but on the way down, it was like, woohoo, this is great, go faster. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
So it was brilliant, because there were lots of firsts on the trip, and some of it, you go out of your comfort zone. That part was fantastic. So the bit that I was a little bit nervous about, absolutely loved.
Yeah. All right. So, by the way, folks, in case you might hear it, we are in the midst of a major thunderstorm, and the poor dog is scared to death of lightning, and we just had a pretty rumbling. So now he's over scratching at the door to get out. So. Anyway, in case I could get knocked off the air too from a storm. All right, I got two more pictures left. That's interesting.
Well, now this again was a wonderful part of the trip, because they say when you sign up for it that it's, as we all know, Chillie, with any cruise itinerary, even big ship itineraries, it's always in the small print, the itinerary can change. With this one, they actively say, this is a very small ship cruise, weather conditions, all sorts of things can make the itinerary change. But in this instance, it was the passengers, and this was such a lovely, lovely thing, because in fact, it was my friend Anthea who found out a couple of weeks before that while we were there on the Borneo part of the trip, there was this big dragon boat festival, annual event being held. And we talked about it to the other passengers and to the captain, and he agreed to take us to it. So we skipped a little bit of the itinerary to get back to where we started a little bit earlier. And the funniest thing was, again, it probably never happened. I can't imagine it happening in the UK if there was some big event on the Thames, or possibly in your neck of the woods, if there was a big organised event, and then suddenly these outsiders just come along. And we were sailing within the other boats, and there were all these crowds on the banks sort of cheering all these wonderful boats with dragons blowing smoke, and then our sort of slightly disparate crowd arrived, and they were waving at us and where'd you come from, and again it was just a very, very special moment that made this such an element that made the whole thing such a fantastic experience.
And then at night, you get back on the boat, and then the adult beverages come out. Is that correct?
Oh, hey. Okay, so now we're jumping back now to the lovely ocean vessel, the Putti. And so, again, yes, well, you'd be thrilled because adult beverages are involved. You can either buy them very inexpensively, or they actually encourage you to bring your own. And we took a couple of bottles of gin all the way from the UK to get there, and then all the mixers and soft drinks are all included in the fare. And obviously, for the size of the boat, very low key entertainment. You're tired in the evening anyway, but wonderful crew, and they played musical instruments, dancing, and things like that. Watching the sunset, great.
All right, Jeannine, I just, as always, I love you to death. And thank you so much for, I said we'd be a max of 30 minutes, and it's 36 minutes already. So anyway,
what's 36?
Thank you. And we've got, there's a bunch of other stuff that you've done that we didn't even get a chance to touch on today. So we got to do this again real soon.
Another time. Okay.
And then we'll come up with a day when I'm over there next January, because I want a big hug and an adult beverage with you for sure.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. We'll see each other online before then.
Okay. Jeannine, thanks much for being with me, and we'll see you next time. That is my favorite travel journalist, travel writer, Jeannine Williamson. Goodness gracious, she is just so wonderful. All right, I got to get to the news, folks, but first, how about a quick break from one of our network sponsors? And before we do that, folks, I did get some pictures from Roger as he on his Alaska cruise. So let me show those real quick before I get over there. This was at the Prince Rupert Museum, and that was on the next to last day of the cruise. This was a foggy Margarita Glacier. They just had terrible weather. This is his son Sam on a UTV excursion near Ketchikan. A rainy day, and Sam went hiking in the mountains. I believe that's in Skagway. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. Another cold and rainy day in Juneau. Skagway is the second deepest fjord in the world. I was not aware of that. And then they went to a restaurant in San Francisco where Sam had some salt and pepper, how do you say that? Dijonnaise crab at the RNG Lounge in San Francisco, which was one of Nikki's favorite spots. So I'm glad that they were able to go back to one of Nikki's favorite spots. It's just awesome. So, Roger, thank you for that. Glad you were able to do that. All right, let's get on with a couple news stories here, folks, if I can get down to it. Here we go. For one family, the cruise nightmare has only gone from bad to worse. The Galts were near the end of their family reunion vacation on board Norwegian Encore when a mishap from a local tour operator caused them to miss the cruise ship, stranding all 9 members of the group in Ketchikan. The nightmare began when the Oklahoma-based family was trying to return to the 4,000-passenger ship at the conclusion of an excursion to see a lumberjack show in the rural port that took place on July the 12th. The family alleges that the tour operator didn't check to make sure everyone on the shuttle back to the port had the proper tickets, instead relying on head counts. This allowed potentially non-ticketed passengers to replace people like the Galts who had the proper credentials. The family was told to wait for another bus, which never came. With the all aboard time looming, they called the Port Authority for help. A van was sent to retrieve the family, but the ride came too late. The cruisers returned to port just in time to watch as their ship sailed away with their belongings, including clothing, important medications, and their passports. 6 kids on board, minor children, and a 78-year-old mother-in-law, all on medication. Because all family members didn't have their passports with them, they were also unable to meet the ship for the final stop at the 7-night cruise, a call in Victoria, British Columbia, and Canada, the following day. That would have been the 13th of July. Rejoining the vessel would have enabled them to retrieve their belongings and sail back to the home port of Seattle with a bit less angst than what they ultimately endured. 8 of the 9 passports were off the ship, but 1 was left on board. And this is really an all or nothing type of situation. While being left behind in port is a nightmare in its own right, the Galt family was not expecting to wake up the next morning to a charge of nearly $9,000 from Norwegian Cruise Line. Citing the Passenger Vessel Services Act, the cruise line charged $971 per passenger for fees incurring from violating U.S. Customs and Border Protection policies by them missing the ship. This expense was understandably an unpleasant surprise, especially as the family had already spent around $30,000 for the vacation and was quickly running up a bill trying to pay for meals, hotels, new travel arrangements to get home, etc. Initially, all new expenses had to be paid out of pocket by the family before Norwegian offered reimbursement. And it's unclear if Norwegian will offer reimbursement or not. After a grueling ordeal to get home, which included stops in numerous cities, overnight airport stays, canceled flights, baggage pickup, the family has made its way back home to Tulsa. Even so, the nightmare continues as several family members have been diagnosed with COVID, although it's unclear where they were exposed to the virus. While it wasn't directly stated as such, context clues suggest that the family's Ketchikan shore excursion was likely booked through the cruise line. While cruise lines don't usually wait for tardy guests due to the need to stay on schedule and the potential for hefty port fees that come with docking longer than anticipated, most ships offer reassurance that they will wait for delayed guests on an excursion booked through the cruise company. However, the Galt family feels that NCL simply forgot about them and didn't act quickly enough to help. Carolyn Galt said that we're still looking into it, but we haven't found, Norwegian said to Carolyn Galt that they are still looking into it, but have not forgotten about you. And Carolyn Galt says, I was like, no, we feel you pretty much forgot about us when you left us in port and told us to go figure it out. You know, Norwegian treating this like it was a customer service issue rather than it was an emergency is, I think, the worst part of it, added Joshua Galt. They said Norwegian had been making a concerted effort to make things right. First, NCL said they attempted to contact the guests before the ship departed and assisted the family in making new hotel and travel accommodations, which differs from the family's view of the story. Norwegian went on to add that the family will be reimbursed for all out-of-pocket expenses incurred as a result of the incident, pending delivery of receipts to the cruise line, and that the family will be refunded for the 2 days of the sailing that they missed. Additionally, the cruise line has begun the process to reverse the nearly $9,000 charge incurred by violating the Passenger Vessel Services Act, although it's unclear when the refund will finish processing. Last but not least, the company is providing all 9 guests with future cruise credit in the form of 20% discount on future sailings as a gesture of goodwill. Now, my problem with this, folks, number one, there's obviously a difference in stories between the Galts and Norwegian, and who knows where the truth is on that. But I've been to that show twice in Ketchikan, and it's an easy walk to get back to the ship. I mean, it's just several blocks. I mean, even with minor children, I'm sure they could have come up with a wheelchair if the elderly lady has trouble walking. I mean, why not, if it's getting close, why not just walk back? I don't understand about the bus. I've never taken a bus to the logging show, unless they've moved the logging show from downtown Ketchikan, where it's always been. So there's just some things about this story that don't totally add up. We have the equipment you need to stay mobile. Whether you need a wheelchair, scooter, power chair, rollator, oxygen, or other pieces of mobility equipment, Scootaround, powered by Will, can help. Once you've booked your rental, we can deliver it to wherever you need. For your mobility needs, contact me or call Scootaround at 888-441-7575. Use SRN 11137 for the best rates. Cruise Line International Association, CLIA, has warned that cruise liners might boycott popular Spanish destinations, including Barcelona and Mallorca, if anti-tourism protests and hostile actions toward tourists continue to escalate. Protests have been particularly intense in places like Barcelona, where tourists have been sprayed with water and pelleted with debris by demonstrators carrying signs that read, "Tourists, go home." Similar demonstrations have taken place in Mallorca, where beaches have been blockaded by angry locals. Residents of Spain argue that tourism is driving up housing costs and making it unaffordable to live in city centers. Norwegian Cruise Line has begun announcing new itineraries and cruise destinations for its 2026 deployment, including the exciting addition of the Port of Philadelphia as a new home port. Norwegian Jewel will be based in the city of brotherly love from April through October, offering coveted Bermuda itineraries for passengers to enjoy. The ship's first sailing will be April 16th, 2026. Norwegian Jewel's itineraries will last 7 to 9 nights to Bermuda, offering overnight calls to Royal Naval Dockyard, so visitors will have ample time to explore the destination's beauty and iconic pink sand beaches. So far, 4 Norwegian Cruise Line ships have been announced for Alaska 2026. Encore and Bliss will offer 7-night round trippers from Seattle. Norwegian Joy, 9 and 10-day itineraries from Seattle. And Jade, 7-night open-jawed Vancouver to Anchorage and back. Whittier will be the new home port, replacing Seward. Nothing has been said yet about Sun or Sky, and usually at least one of them is in Alaska. We'll see. And the final story this morning, folks. Previously scheduled to sail in Asia, the Ovation of the Seas will offer cruises departing from Los Angeles during the summer of 2025. The ship had been slated to operate out of China next summer. Joining Navigator of the Seas on the West Coast market, Ovation will offer 3, 5, and 6-night itineraries through late September. Join us on a totally unique transatlantic cruise on the Norwegian Epic. This cruise sails from New York on March 31st, arrives in Rome on April 15th. stops in Bermuda, Punta Delgada, Lisbon, Barcelona, Cannes, Livorno, and Naples. What a fantastic cruise. Cabins start at $1,632 per person. All you have to do is call me, 434-258-9264, and we'll sail from New York to Rome on the Norwegian Epic. All right, and that's going to wrap up today's show, for the news portion of today's show, at least. I have one thing I'd like to add about Norwegian's deployment to Alaska. With several of the ports up there taking steps to control the number of passengers, I'm not sure how well 3 mega ships from one company is going to go with the people in Alaska. But they're doing it with, Bliss, Joy, and Encore, and plus, at least one other ship. Who knows? All right, let's see who's in the chat room fussing at me. I did see one fuss because I must have said the date is January. I don't know where that came from. Ken is with us up in Pennsylvania. There's Mike from the other side of the pond. He's over there near where Jeannine is. Gretchen says, good morning. It's not January, Chillie. Mike says, no intro today. Gretchen says, I saw the intro. Boy, that's so weird. I wonder if it's because, Mike, you're on the other side of the pond for some reason, and it cuts off of you had it yesterday. I don't know. I didn't hold as long before I started playing the intro as I did yesterday because, Jeannine was in the house, and I didn't want her to have to sit that much longer in the blue room, if you can call it that. Gretchen says, could it be because I'm in the same time zone as Chillie and you? I have no idea. It's just so strange. Gary Older Than Dirk's with us. Hi, Gary. Gretchen, it is probably an internet problem, as you say, time zone incompatibility. I don't know. There's Roger. Good morning. It's at sea on the Crown Princess Promenade deck. All right. Roger, sorry you had the bad weather. Thank you for the pics. I did use some of them earlier. Bob's with us. Good morning, Bob. Since Jean-Claude is a Frenchie, I always have to tell people if you hear grunting and snorts, it's him. He usually sits right with me. I love Frenchies too. Gretchen says, you heard Chillie say it was the 18th of January, didn't you? Yeah. I meant to say it was the 18th of July. Roger, when's your cruise over? Saturday. Todd's with us. And he says hello to Albie. Well, Albie settled back down now and is back in her bed. She did quite a bit of pacing. Oh no, she's not in her bed. She's over at the door, just standing at the door, hoping someone will open it for her. Emily's with us. Good morning, Em. Katie's here. Good to have you, Katie. Of course, everybody's speaking back and forth. Gretchen says, I think I hear Albie. Oh, that's very possible. Joanne says these critters are fascinating. Oh, yeah. I have so much fun with Jeannine. I like to give Jeannine a hard time about inane stuff, and she takes it so well. I enjoy that immensely. We had a thunderstorm last night in New Rochelle. Yeah, we had one. We had a pretty good one yesterday too. And I mean, that one wasn't huge, but I could hear some pretty stout rain also, and one close clap of thunder, and then a couple rumblings off in the distance. Hot Air Tom is with us. Just got home from a visit to the vet. Penny got lots of shots for her annual checkup. And now Penny will be quite protected. Norwegian is awful for leaving them. Well, you know, I'm not 100% sure on the fault of this one. It certainly looks like if they booked a tour through Norwegian, then Norwegian should have stayed till they got back. On the same token, it's their responsibility to get back rather than sitting, just a few blocks away waiting for a bus. Unless maybe it was some kind of a tour that they got on a bus early in the morning and went away, and they had no idea how close they were to the ship. You'd think they'd ask somebody. I don't know. I'm not sure where the fault lays on this one. It does appear to be at least suspicious. I'm not going to say I'm blaming it all on Norwegian, but it does look a little bit suspicious, especially with what Norwegian's doing on the back end now to try to save face. That's when I popped in and said July. Chillie is in England now with Hot Air Tom, January the 18th. Yeah, that's true. I will be actually, we will have gotten in England on the 17th. I think we're going, the first hotel away from Southampton is on the 18th. I don't remember the exact dates. I know we get to London on the 21st. We're staying in London on the 21st to the 26th. And I'm sure there might be an evening where some of my London friends will join us for an adult beverage or several. So, let's see. I shouldn't have been so hard on you, Chillie. You must have mentally been in England. Oh no, Gretchen, you're perfectly allowed to be hard on me. If I make a stupid mistake like that, you can give me hell. I can take it. I'm not upset. If I said January, I had a brain. You know what? I need to visit Boston first before we jump to England. And whoops, missed the cruise ship Dr. Cruise on the way. Yeah, we got, and we got the gym too for the whole month of September. We're together. Tom, is it cooler in the evenings in Pennsylvania? Chilliescruises, have you done that show from a Norwegian ship? Yeah. From what I understand, has its own terminal that is a ways away from downtown. That's part of the complaints on NCL Cruises. Have I done an Alaska show? So Norwegian does not dock at the normal place in Ketchikan. Was not aware of that. That may be the issue that you have to bus to it. That might make more sense now. But then why didn't they send them back another bus? I don't know. There's something about this just doesn't add up to me, Hot Air Tom. Doesn't add up. Todd says we walked maybe 20 minutes to the logging show from the boat. Yeah, I mean I haven't walked it, but I've ridden scooters and I've ridden my chair, and it's an easy. I mean, it's nothing. You come up the ramp from the dock. You go down like 2 blocks and in a block and a half, and it's right there. Joanne says the new Philiport is exciting for us near Philadelphia. Yep, I'll definitely have to sell out of Philadelphia now. That's another one to put on my bucket list. It was a shore excursion through Norwegian. That's what it appears. You should do some research on NCL at Ketchikan. They dock in Ward Cove, if I got my info straight in my memory. Okay. And where actually is Ward Cove? I'll check with Nate on that one. Wasn't aware of that this morning, or I would have done that before I did that story. So I got one to check on, and I'll get back to you on that one, folks. Sunflowers listening. Welcome. That's from over on X. By the way, we have had a nice audience from X over there today. Glad to have you guys back. Again, my apologies. Right now, we've got 127 people watching on X. That's a great number since we just got started back up again. And by the way, Sunflower, we had a couple days that I was not on X. Was not my doings. It was a problem between StreamYard, which I do my streaming, and X, and I was not able to go live. So that's all fixed now. Hot Air Tom says, sounded to me like the tour operator really screwed up. Number one, not restricting access to the bus to ticket holders. Number two, not sending a bus back. Number three, not informing NCL excursions that they were missing non-guests. The prices on the Jewel out of Philly are way too high, similar pricing to the Aqua in New York in 2026. Yeah, they are high, and I'm looking for that to change. What cruise lines you're going on out of Philadelphia? Right now, it's just Norwegian. Who knows if that could change? I watched a YouTuber wait for the shuttle back to Ward Cove, and it was a madhouse of a crowd. Lots of complaints. Okay, so a little something for me to check on a little further. So I will do that, folks. I promise. I'll get the word right from the horse's mouth up there in Alaska. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap me up for today. I've gone over my hour mark. I don't like to do that. Again, thank you all for being with me. Please smash that thumbs up button. That'll help us out tremendously. If you have not subscribed, please do so. It doesn't cost anything. The bell notification will tell you when I go live or when a new video is up, and I do lots of both. So, all right, guys, I'll see everybody back here tomorrow for Friday Travel and Cruise Industry News Podcast. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, think about cruising, and hopefully one day soon we'll all get together on a high seas. Have a great day, everybody.
I regularly post videos on all facets of the travel and cruise industry. So if you like to keep up with the latest in cruise ships, ports of call, cruises themselves, Chillie chats, and travel and cruise industry news, just hit the little subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, hit the bell notification so you'll be notified when a new video is up or we go live. This video was produced by Chilliescruises.